Well, it's important to understand from the Israeli point of view regarding annexation that they really need the U.S. support. There are no major international players who support this move by Israel. And just to put that into perspective, yesterday, over 1,000 parliament members from across Europe signed a memorandum basically against an Israeli annexation move. These are parliament members who are part of the EU, with the EU's official stance also being against that.
Welcome back. Well, senior US officials are expected to meet today to discuss whether to approve Israel's annexation plan in the West Bank ahead of the July 1st target date set by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So what are the options? Well, here's the latest.
Decision time. The White House is set to decide greenlight Israeli annexation plans or not. David Friedman, U.S. ambassador to Israel, a key player in orchestrating this far-reaching policy move, will be arriving in Washington to meet with senior administration officials such as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Special Advisor Jared Kushner. President Donald Trump himself may also join in the discussions. The main question now, says an administration official, is whether annexation will help to promote peace with the Palestinians. According to the source, the options expected to be considered are a gradual, step-by-step process in which Israel will first declare sovereignty over some settlements near Jerusalem instead of 30% of the West Bank as Netanyahu envisioned in the original plan. The official said the administration has not closed the door to wider annexation, but fears that if Israel moves too quickly, it could ultimately end any chance of getting the Palestinians to the negotiating table to discuss Trump's greater peace plan. In addition, Washington also fears opposition to annexation in Jordan and the Gulf states. The latter countries in recent years have secretly expanded their cooperation with Israel. Annexation might undermine the progress that has been made so far. And if that's not enough, the source added that Washington wants the entire Israeli government, which is still divided over the issue, to come to a conclusion before promoting any measures. Meanwhile, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency reports U.S. representatives with the Republican Party sent a letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu supporting Israel's right to set its own borders. The signatories, totaling 116 out of 198 GOP House members, also reaffirmed the, quote, unshakable alliance between the United States and Israel. But at the moment, what appears to be far from unshakable is the grand annexation plan and its July 1st deadline.
And for more, let's now go to our correspondent, Alec Pollard, who is standing by at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. Alec, good morning to you. Thank you for joining me. Firstly, I would like to talk to you about this meeting. We did expect it yesterday, happening now today, a very important meeting, a lot of high-ranking U.S. and also Israeli officials. What can we expect to come out of this?
Good morning, Sarah. Well, it's important to understand from the Israeli point of view regarding annexation that they really need the U.S. support. There are no major international players who support this move by Israel. And just to put that into perspective, yesterday, over 1,000 parliament members from across Europe signed a memorandum basically against an Israeli annexation move. These are parliament members who are part of the EU, with the EU's official stance also being against that, which emphasizes how important it is for Israel to have that U.S. support in order for them to proceed, to be in sync with the U.S. administration regarding the type of move that Israel makes, what percent of the territory, which areas it decides to push forward and annex, which is why it's so important what comes out of these meetings with U.S. officials to see how Israel can proceed with this.
And Alec, we know that it was the US in the very beginning which mapped out this so-called peace plan and drew up these annexation plans. Then we saw the US kind of take a step back and tell Israel to just hold off for the time being. Really, can we expect Israel to listen to what the US has to say, or will it proceed anyway?
No, I think Israel will try to be in coordination with what the U.S. will allow, basically, for Israel to do, and that really will depend on what the final position is. And there are several camps at the moment inside the U.S. administration. On the one hand, you have Jared Kushner, who was one of the major architects of the Trump peace plan, which stipulates that this move be part of a negotiation with the Palestinians, which is currently not going on. And for Kushner, the relations with the Gulf states, with Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, is very tight. It's very important for him that his peace initiative is not thrown out the window. Therefore, he's going to be pulling the reins back to a certain extent. On the other hand, you have the ambassador, David Friedman, who's currently not here at the embassy, who wants to push forward with a full 30% annexation. So a lot of this is going to come down to what President Trump has to say on the matter.
And Alec, you did just mention before this memorandum coming from the EU. Tell me, can this have any sway?
I think it's really just a reminder of the fact that Israel does not have any type of European support for this annexation move, which just emphasizes again how important the U.S. support is. And in the end of the day, annexation really will be decided in Washington and also in Jerusalem, because it needs cooperation between the Likud party and the Blue and White party, and it has to pass a vote in parliament. So Washington, Jerusalem, those are going to be the major deciding factors regarding annexation rather than Brussels.
All right, Alec Pollard there, thank you for the update. We'll come back to you a little later on. And for more, let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adi Koplowitz, who joins me here in studio. Good morning, Adi. Thanks for coming in. Firstly, I'd like to talk to you about now another player involved in this. Qatar is now saying that if Israel does, in fact, go ahead with these annexation plans, it will stop this aid going into the impoverished Gaza Strip. We know that the situation there right now is extremely dire. Tell us more about this.
Yes, Sarah, Qatar has been helping the Gaza Strip with aid money for over 2 years now. And we know that every time that this aid money is delayed and not entering the Gaza Strip, there's suddenly unrest at the border between Gaza and Israel. We've seen that just 2 weeks ago. There was a delay in the money transfer, and all of a sudden incendiary balloons were launched from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. And we've heard some very aggressive rhetorics coming from within the Gaza Strip, threatening that if the aid money won't enter, there will be much more unrest. And even teams of Hamas will continue to bother Israeli residencies around the Gaza border. And now we're seeing that Qatar is actually using this leverage on Israel in order to pressure Israel to avoid annexation by threatening that it won't transfer this money to Hamas. The result of this is expected. We've seen it in the past. If the money doesn't enter the Strip, Hamas usually does turn to more aggressive means and is causing some unrest at the Gaza border. And what's interesting about this is that we've heard Hamas using some very aggressive rhetorics against the annexation, criticizing the Palestinian Authority very hard for not taking it down to the street into an armed struggle against Israel. But Hamas still didn't choose to oppose annexation with violent means. And it seems that in order to do that, they're waiting or looking, or they need this push from Qatar to pressure Israel. And it's interesting because we know that Hamas can easily launch rockets or incendiary balloons towards Israel when it wants, but it only chooses to do so when the aid money from Qatar doesn't enter the Strip. It seems like Qatar is more in the interest of a violent escalation on the Gaza border than Hamas itself, maybe because Hamas is the one that will have to take the consequences and recover the Gaza Strip in case that really happens.
And we know that these annexation plans are deeply dividing people and opinions. And we know now that there's been a poll conducted amongst Palestinians regarding what they think about the annexation plans. Tell us a little bit more there.
Yes, the Palestinian Research Center for Policy and Surveys is now coming out with this poll talking mainly about the public opinion in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Gaza regarding the annexation. And the main findings are that the majority of Palestinians really do believe that Israel is going to go forward with annexation. And 65% of Palestinians support the policy of the Palestinian Authority in suspending the agreements with Israel. Obviously, all of the Palestinian public is against the annexation, and almost half of the Palestinians believe that the most vital issue that they need to confront is this annexation and to end the Israeli presence in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. However, some of the Palestinians are quite skeptic that the Palestinian Authority would actually go forward with suspending these agreements. And many of them, so much as 65%, are quite concerned about the implications that suspending the agreements would have. This includes stopping travels for medical intentions to Israel and to Jordan, maybe a stop in water supplies or electricity supplies that are coming from Israel and may be affected by suspending the agreements between the Palestinian Authority and Israel. And still, the majority majority of Palestinians support suspending the agreements, support this way of confronting Israel, and only 52% of Palestinians support using armed struggle as a way to oppose occupation and the annexation. And it sounds like a lot, but that's actually a decrease from the previous poll. So really quite interesting findings.
All right, well, this meeting happening in just a few hours. Adi Kopelwitz, thank you.